Yeah, I've hit the jackpot marrying into money, Bob taunted with a smirk, tossing his disdainful words my way as I savored a moment of relaxation in the hotel lobby. His voice grated on my nerves, soaring my mood. I wondered where he had found his new wife, the president's daughter no less, Julie of Johnson Enterprises. Bob's obnoxious laugh, tinged with middle-aged pride, struck me as juvenile. But at the mention of Johnson Enterprises, my curiosity was piqued. It sounded familiar. Ah, yes, that one. Memories of Johnson Enterprises flooded back. Bob beamed with self-satisfaction while I struggled to stifle a rising laugh. My name is Amy, 35 years old, married to Bob. I work in my family's real estate business, mainly handling administrative duties as my father, the president, oversees the strategic aspects. As an only child, the weight of eventually taking the helm hangs over me. Despite senior executives in our company, I feel the pressure of one day becoming its president. Yet I've been cautious not to divulge too much about our family business to Bob, my husband 3 years my senior. I avoid bringing work matters home, especially since Bob, who only finished high school and works in a moving company, feels insecure about it. Moving is tough, demanding physical strength and skill, a job for professionals. While I don't mind his educational background, I understand his feelings. So I steer clear of mentioning my prestigious university degree or my future role as president in our daily conversations. Bob and I met through a mutual friend's introduction during college. He was in charge of moving my friend who initially interested him but was unavailable. They got along well, so she introduced him to me, and our unconventional meeting turned out to be a good match. His carefree nature complemented my meticulous personality. After several dates, we became a couple. In my late 20s and eager for a partner, our relationship quickly led to marriage within a year. Thus began my life as Bob's wife. Our married life started smoothly. Bob's parents were incredibly kind and welcoming during our visits, which made me feel fortunate compared to the mother-in-law issues my friends faced. However, Bob's demanding job often kept him out late, returning home exhausted from the physical strain. Despite his fatigue, he always prioritized our marriage. "Thanks for always waiting up for me," he'd say gratefully, even for something as simple as dinner after his long workdays. I felt blessed to have such a thoughtful husband. But a year into our marriage, our peaceful days started to waver. "Hey, why can't we have kids?" Bob asked one night in bed, his tone slightly irritated, catching me off guard. While I had also thought about starting a family, we hadn't actively tried yet, assuming it would happen in due course given our regular marital life. "I understand you're eager, but it's just bad timing. We've only been married a year, so let's not worry about it yet," I reassured Bob, though I definitely wanted children. Rushing wouldn't help, so I adopted a relaxed tone to reassure him. "It's still okay." "Huh, don't you know that for couples not using contraception, there's about an 80% chance of conceiving within a year?" Bob asserted forcefully, citing statistics. 80% within a year. Not well versed in pregnancy statistics, that figure sounded surprisingly high to me. "Really? If you're that eager, maybe we should get tested together," I suggested, thinking it sensible to identify any issues early on. But Bob's response caught me off guard. "What are you talking about? Are you implying it's my fault? Infertility issues are usually the woman's fault. There's no point in me getting tested." His tone was disdainful, a sharp departure from his usual demeanor. I was stunned by his accusation. I hadn't blamed him, only suggested testing to understand the situation better. Bob jumped to the conclusion that I was pointing fingers at him. "It's always the woman's fault," he asserted, clearly insinuating I was the problem. "Is that so?" I wanted to respond, but I was shaken, unable to find words. "Just you get tested. I'm too busy with work. Unlike you, I actually have a job," he continued, belittling my role as an administrative assistant. "Just coasting along at your dad's company, huh?" "I don't just coast at work. Sure, I handle administrative tasks now, but I'm also learning management from my father. I'm constantly proving myself to the higher-ups." I wanted to explain, but it seemed Bob didn't grasp the challenges I faced. That night, arguing seemed futile. Every attempt I made was met with sharp retorts. We slept back to back, the tension heavy between us. From then on, Bob's attitude towards me changed drastically. "I'm home." "What, dinner's not ready yet? What time do you think it is? Can't have kids, can't even manage the house. What a useless wife." One evening, after discussing the future with my father, I returned to Bob's berating over dinner not being prepared. I'm sorry. I just got home 10 minutes ago. I'll start cooking now. Just wait a bit, please. I hurriedly explained, but Bob muttered, typical of a boss's daughter from a small company. He didn't realize my father's real estate business was sizable, employing hundreds. Arguing was pointless. I began cooking while he poured himself a drink which seemed to calm him down. Relying on alcohol to maintain our relationship felt like a sad state of affairs. Enduring his berating was becoming unbearable. But if alcohol could bring even a hint of peace, I figured it was worth it. The next morning, Bob's sour mood lingered. Make sure dinner's ready when I get home, he snapped before leaving. I sighed, thinking about my plans for the day. I had taken the day off to visit the gynecologist for fertility testing, as Bob had suggested. While I had initially proposed the idea, facing the prospect of undergoing testing alone while Bob refused was hard to accept. Complaining wouldn't change anything. If the issue was with me, starting infertility treatment promptly was crucial. Bob wanted children, and I too longed for a child soon. Knowing fertility rates decline with age, I understood the urgency. The clinic was busier than expected, and I was called in an hour after arriving. After a physical examination and blood tests, I was told to return for the results. While the thought of being the issue was daunting, I was prepared to take the necessary steps, whatever the outcome. Bob, I had the fertility test today. I told him when he returned from work. Figures. If the problem's with you, testing makes sense. Let me know the results, he replied curtly. His belief that I was solely responsible for our infertility frustrated me. The testing process was taxing, and I longed for some empathy from him. 5 years passed, and I turned 35. Despite our efforts, we remained childless, and Bob seemed resigned to the idea of not having children with me. His late nights increased, sometimes not coming home at all. When questioned, he claimed he was out drinking and singing karaoke with colleagues till morning, a behavior more fitting for a college student. My workload grew, and the dream of starting a family drifted further away. But Bob's recent actions pushed me to the brink. His disregard for our home life was unmistakable. One day, when Bob left his smartphone behind, I noticed an incoming call from someone named Julie. Assuming it was work-related, I answered to inform them about Bob forgetting his phone. Hey Bob, you're late? I've been waiting for 30 minutes. Where are you? If you don't hurry, we'll miss the park opening. A flirty voice on Bob's phone made me freeze. Hello, can you hear me? Hurry up, okay. We haven't had a date in so long. The word date echoed in my mind, sending a chill down my spine. Without hesitation, I ended the call, my heart racing uncontrollably. Who was this woman? She couldn't be a colleague if they were planning dates. Was Bob cheating on me? Gripping his phone tightly, I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. While I struggled with infertility, Bob was carrying on an affair. His recent distance and late nights suddenly made sense. He didn't need me anymore. Furious and determined to confront him with undeniable proof, I began gathering evidence of his infidelity. It didn't take long. Using his birthday to unlock his phone, I found Julie's name plastered throughout the call history. Opening their messages revealed a string of sickeningly affectionate exchanges that made me sick to my stomach. I photographed everything with my own phone before carefully placing Bob's phone back where I found it. For the rest of the day, I pretended as if nothing had happened. Inside, I was seething with rage and hurt, but I needed to be calm and collected for what lay ahead. After a month of tension in our marriage, my father, the company president, summoned me to his office with a grave expression. I have something important to discuss with you, he began, leaving me shocked by his words. Is that true? I asked, needing confirmation. Yes, so I'm counting on you, he replied, his words disturbing me deeply. I returned to my office in a daze, unable to focus on work. That evening, Bob unexpectedly suggested we separate. Despite already finding evidence of his affair and contemplating divorce, his initiation saved me the trouble. Yes, let's get divorced, I responded calmly. Really? Bob seemed surprised by my swift agreement, perhaps expecting more resistance. His expression betrayed a certain joy, irritating me deeply. Despite my irritation, I signed the divorce papers he presented. I can file these tomorrow. I'll be leaving this house, I informed him. Okay, are you sure about the mortgage? He asked. Anticipating this question, I casually replied, yes, I'm fine. Although Bob's job was demanding, I doubted his ability to manage the mortgage alone. Yet since he initiated the divorce and had been unfaithful, I felt no obligation to assist him. I packed my belongings and moved back to my parents' house nearby 3 days later. Initially concerned upon hearing about my divorce, my parents grew furious upon learning of Bob's infidelity. They reassured me repeatedly that parting ways with such a man was the right decision. Immersing myself in work, I tried to push thoughts of Bob aside. Before I knew it, a year had passed, consumed by the demands of my job. One day, as I relaxed in the living room, my dad approached me with concern. "Why don't you take a break and go on a trip? Things will get busy next month." His suggestion came as a welcome distraction. Feeling mentally exhausted from recent events, I decided to heed his advice and planned a trip to the Northeast. It was my first solo trip, a mix of nerves and excitement. The crisp northeastern air felt cleansing to my weary soul. Engaging with friendly locals who guided me and chatting with a bar owner lifted my spirits. I had booked a stay in Seattle, the region's largest city, intent on fully enjoying my journey. After checking into my hotel and settling in the lobby with a drink, the fatigue of travel melted away. Feeling completely at ease, I playfully entertained the thought of relocating to Seattle when a familiar voice cut through the tranquility. Hey, what are you doing here?" Startled, I turned to see my ex-husband, Bob, entering with 2 large suitcases and a young woman. She exuded youthfulness with flawless skin, bold makeup, and striking red nails, despite the chilly weather. "Why are you here? And who is she?" I asked, my curiosity and discomfort mingling. "Oh, let me introduce you. This is Julie, my new wife. We're on our honeymoon. Guess what? She's the daughter of a wealthy businessman," Bob announced with a happiness that stung. "But Julie, that was the name on the phone," I murmured, disgusted by his choice of a much younger partner. "You're on a solo trip? How pathetic," Bob sneered, oblivious to his own hypocrisy as the one who cheated and initiated our divorce. Julie's gaze held a hint of mockery as she chimed in. "Hey, Bob, is this your ex-wife? She looks older. Hurry up with check-in." I bristled at her condescending tone and shot her a glare. Bob casually wrapped an arm around Julie, continuing, "Yeah, I've secured my future, marrying you to money. Meanwhile, you can continue to struggle in your sad life." His words cut through the elegance of the hotel lobby, leaving me feeling disturbed amidst the sophistication I had been enjoying moments ago. But when he mentioned marrying a businessman's daughter, I couldn't help but wonder where he met someone like that. "Yeah, Julie is actually the daughter of Johnson Enterprises." Bob chuckled with a hint of pride that struck me as oddly childish. Johnson Enterprises. It rang a bell in my mind. "It's part of our real estate holdings. I don't know if your company is involved in real estate, but it's not shabby building," I said, trying to match his tone. They both seemed unconvinced by my response. Pausing briefly, I realized there was no going back now. Telling Bob about my company, we were divorced and his pride was no longer my concern. "Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I was actually present when my father purchased that building. I believe it was about a $200 million acquisition. Recently, though, he's been dealing with issues like a tenant not paying rent. Turns out it's your company," Bob continued, a hint of smugness in his voice. "My father's a real estate magnate with assets totaling $3.2 billion. The building housing Johnson Enterprises is just one of them. The tenant situation has been a concern for a few months now." "Rent not paid," Julie exclaimed in disbelief, then burst into laughter. "That's impossible. Our company is thriving. We can definitely pay the rent." I'm not buying this attempt to sow discord between Bob and me with a flimsy lie. Shrill voice reverberated in my ears. I sighed deeply, realizing any rational conversation with her seemed futile. Right then and there, I pulled out my smartphone and dialed my dad's number. "Dad, I'm here with the daughter of Johnson Enterprises. Can you send me a photo of the rent reminder notice?" I asked quickly. Dad promptly sent me a photo of the reminder notice for Johnson Enterprises' unpaid rent. Showing it to Bob and Julie, I doubted they could suspect it was a fake given the speed. "See, can you tell? 3 months of unpaid rent. If you don't pay soon, we might have to sue. What are you going to do?" At the mention of a lawsuit, Bob and Julie's faces turned pale. Come to think of it, Dad has been really on edge lately, yelling about sales and firing a lot of employees. Julie mumbled uncertainly. Hearing her, Bob erupted in despair. "Lies. You're just trying to trick us and tear Julie and me apart, aren't you? You're still that kind of person, trying to get back at me for remarrying. Your tactics are dirty." Startled by Bob's outburst, I took a step back. "Dirty tactics, huh? Memories of Bob's hurtful words during our marriage flashed through my mind. Gathering my courage to confront him, now gloating about marrying Julie, the daughter of a wealthy businessman, I prepared to speak my truth. What are you even saying? Do you really think I still have feelings for you? How foolish. I've long been fed up with a man like you. In fact, I feel sorry for Julie, getting caught up with you. Did you marry her just for her money? You married me for shallow reasons too, wanting to marry quickly or have kids. And who left me when he found out we couldn't have kids? Who insulted me, calling me useless for being infertile? You're to blame for all of it, yet you think I still like you. You must be out of your mind. A sense of relief washed over me as I let out my pent-up frustrations. Bob, however, seethed with anger, trembling. You're just an arrogant old hag. You probably can't even get married or have kids anymore. Julie and I were planning to have fun making a baby after this trip, and now you're accusing Johnson Enterprises of not paying rent? Panicked by the realization of Johnson Enterprises' financial troubles, Bob sought to shift blame onto me. Deciding to deliver the final blow, I said firmly, "Oh, I did mention it, but I'm 4 months pregnant. I'm in a stable phase of my pregnancy, and Dad suggested I take this trip to relax. Of course, I have my doctor's permission." That's right. After divorcing Bob, I found a new love. He's my boss at work, a subordinate of my father. He supported me mentally when I was struggling and encouraged me. He's been fully supportive at work and backed my promotion to CEO. I found out about my pregnancy with his child just 3 months ago. Knowing about the baby, we decided to marry quickly. It was a whirlwind wedding, and the company celebrated it grandly. My pregnancy has been smooth, and with the encouragement of my father and husband, I embarked on this trip. Just before breaking up with Bob, my father had informed me he would retire as CEO next month. He decided it was time to step down after being diagnosed with diabetes. This meant I would inherit my father's assets. It made accepting the divorce from Bob easier. I knew I could still lead a fulfilling life without him. The word pregnant slipped effortlessly from my lips, leaving Bob shouting, "What? You're pregnant? We're using birth control when we were married. What's going on?" Bob stomped his feet in complete confusion. "Birth control? I never used it. Remember I told you I had infertility tests at the clinic and they found no issues. So the problem was with you too," I said bluntly. Bob's face contorted visibly at my words. "The problem was with me. Does that mean Julie and I can't have kids? Why did I divorce you and marry Julie?" Bob muttered to himself, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "What do you mean? Why?" Julie snapped, her anger directed at Bob's selfish reasoning. Realizing I couldn't deal with them any longer, I delivered my final words. "That's why from now on, please refrain from involving me and Julie in any matters regarding the rent for Johnson Enterprises. I won't back down until it's fully paid. If you plan to continue renting that building, please settle the overdue rent soon. Otherwise, we'll have to take legal action. I have nothing more to say to you two. Goodbye." Leaving Bob and Julie to argue, I confidently walked back to my hotel room. Upon returning from my trip, my husband greeted me with a smile, saying, "Welcome back. Sorry I couldn't help around the house. Was everything okay?" Of course, everything was fine. "I'm glad I got to relax, dear." "Thank you." My husband smiled warmly at me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Since marrying my current husband, I've felt reassured every day, completely putting Bob out of my mind. After that trip, I haven't seen Bob. Here's what I learned through my father's contacts afterward. Bob and Julie's fights became constant. Despite thinking he was marrying into wealth, Bob discovered Johnson Enterprises was deeply in debt. Coincidentally, news broke about an employee of Johnson Enterprises embezzling millions from clients. Julie's father knew about the fraud but tried to cover it up for the company's sake. However, once the scandal went public, Johnson Enterprises' reputation took a hit. The company faced a mass exodus of employees. In such dire straits, they couldn't afford to pay the rent, prompting my father to pursue legal action against them. The future of the company looked grim solely due to Johnson Enterprises' mismanagement. Bob, having lost a fortune he believed was his, was furious, blaming everyone but himself. Thinking he could ride on the coattails of a wealthy heiress was overly optimistic of Bob. Julie, upon discovering Bob's infertility, accused him of marriage fraud. Following our encounter at the hotel, I had a lawyer demand compensation from Bob for his infidelity, which left both him and Julie in debt. I later heard that Bob and Julie argued every time they met, eventually leading to their recent divorce. Then, unbelievably, Bob called me after divorcing Julie. Amy, please marry me again. I have debts and Julie made me buy everything she wanted and left without paying a dime. You're the only one I can rely on. I'll do anything for you. Please forgive me. Bob's pleas were pitiful, almost sickening. His unchanged attitude of marrying for money was appalling. No, I have no desire to be involved with you ever again. I'm going to be happy with my husband and our child, so please don't contact me again. Goodbye, I said calmly, then immediately blocked his phone number. With his wife and money lost, Bob will likely live a lonely life. Given his infertility, remarriage might be difficult for him. It's hard to imagine anyone falling for someone who mocks others so readily. All I could think was that he should at least try to repay his debts. I considered it someone else's problem. As for me, I look forward to my life with my husband and our soon-to-arrive baby. Both my work and personal life are more fulfilling than ever, and I'm savoring this unparalleled happiness.